Colbert launched into his opening remarks with characteristic smugness, immediately steering the conversation toward politics rather than Jackman's upcoming projects. "Hugh, you've been pretty quiet about the current political climate," Colbert began, his tone carrying an edge that made the studio audience shift uncomfortably. "Given your platform and influence, don't you think celebrities have a responsibility to speak out against what's happening in this country?" Jackman's smile faltered slightly as he recognized the trap being set. "Stephen, I'm here to talk about my new film and connect with your audience. Politics isn't really why I'm here tonight." His response was diplomatic but firm, clearly attempting to redirect the conversation back to safer ground. But Colbert wasn't having it. He leaned forward aggressively, his voice rising with mock incredulity. "Oh, come on, Hugh. You can't just sit there and pretend everything's fine when democracy is literally under attack. Your silence is complicity." The audience grew noticeably uncomfortable as Colbert's tone became increasingly confrontational, abandoning any pretense of friendly banter. Jackman's jaw tightened as he processed the accusation. Years of media training had prepared him for difficult interviews, but nothing quite like this public ambush. "Stephen, with respect, I didn't come here to be lectured about my political obligations. I came here as a guest on your show to have a conversation, not to be interrogated about my personal beliefs." The tension in the studio was palpable now. Crew members exchanged worried glances as Colbert's behavior became increasingly erratic. He began gesticulating wildly, his voice dripping with condescension. "Personal beliefs? We're talking about basic human decency here, Hugh. When children are being separated from their families, when voting rights are under assault, when the very fabric of our society is being torn apart, there's no such thing as staying neutral." Jackman's famous composure began to crack as Colbert continued his tirade. The actor's hands gripped the armrests of his chair, his knuckles whitening as he fought to maintain his professional demeanor. "I think you're confusing having a political opinion with having basic human compassion, Stephen. Just because I don't broadcast my every political thought on social media doesn't mean I don't care about people." The audience fell completely silent, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented. Colbert's face flushed red as he realized his guest wasn't backing down. "Oh, so now you're taking the moral high ground? That's rich coming from someone who's made millions entertaining people while staying conveniently silent about the real issues affecting their lives." Jackman stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor with a sound that echoed through the stunned studio. His voice dropped to a dangerously quiet level that somehow carried more weight than any shout could have. "You know what, Stephen? I've been doing this for 30 years, and I've never encountered such unprofessional behavior from a host. You invited me here under false pretenses, ambushed me with political gotcha questions, and now you're questioning my character because I won't dance to your tune?" The confrontation had reached a boiling point that no one in the studio could have anticipated when the cameras started rolling just minutes earlier. The confrontation had reached a boiling point that no one in the studio could have anticipated when the cameras started rolling just minutes earlier. Colbert's face contorted with rage as he shot up from behind his desk, his usual calculated persona completely abandoning him. "False pretenses? You're sitting on my show, benefiting from my platform, and you have the audacity to lecture me about professionalism?" His voice cracked with indignation as he jabbed his finger toward Jackman. "I've been doing this show for years, building an audience that actually cares about the world around them, not just mindless entertainment." The studio audience sat frozen in their seats, unsure whether to applaud, boo, or simply flee. This wasn't the scripted comedy they'd come to see. The energy in the room had shifted into something genuinely hostile, with two powerful figures in entertainment squaring off in a way that felt intensely personal. Jackman's eyes blazed with a fury that few had ever witnessed from the typically composed actor. "Building an audience? You've built an echo chamber of people who think exactly like you do, Stephen. And when someone doesn't immediately fall in line with your worldview, You attack them like some kind of political enforcer. His Australian accent grew thicker as his emotions intensified, each word delivered with surgical precision. You want to talk about platforms? Let's talk about how you've used yours to divide people instead of bringing them together. You've turned what should be entertainment into a nightly sermon where you preach to your choir and demonize anyone who doesn't share your exact political beliefs. Colbert's hands trembled with rage as he gripped the edge of his desk. Demonize? I'm trying to save this country from people who would rather stick their heads in the sand than face reality. Your privilege is showing, Hugh. It must be nice to stay above the fray when you're not the one whose rights are being threatened. The accusation of privilege struck a nerve that Jackman hadn't expected. His voice rose to match Colbert's intensity, all pretense of diplomatic restraint finally cracking. My privilege? You want to talk about privilege? You sit behind this desk every night, worth millions of dollars, lecturing working-class Americans about their moral failures while you live in your Manhattan bubble. I grew up in Sydney's western suburbs, Stephen. My father left when I was 8. My mother struggled with mental illness. I worked my way up from community theater to where I am today, and I've never forgotten where I came from. Don't you dare lecture me about privilege when you've never walked in my shoes. The studio fell into an eerie silence as both men glared at each other across the suddenly vast-seeming space. Crew members frantically gestured to each other, unsure whether to cut the cameras or let this unprecedented moment continue to unfold. The audience seemed to collectively hold their breath, witnessing what felt like a genuine breakdown of the carefully constructed facade of late-night television. Colbert's laugh was bitter and mocking as he shook his head. Oh, the sob story. Defense. How original. You think your hard-luck childhood gives you a pass to stay silent while democracy crumbles? Newsflash, Hugh, your personal struggles don't absolve you of your responsibility to use your platform for good. Jackman's face had gone completely pale except for 2 spots of red burning high on his cheekbones. When he spoke again, his voice was deadly quiet, forcing everyone in the studio to strain to hear him. You know what I think, Stephen? I think you've confused being politically active with being a decent human being. I think you've bought into your own hype so completely that you can't imagine anyone disagreeing with you without being evil. And I think you've forgotten that entertainment used to be about bringing people together, not driving them apart. You've turned your show into a weapon, and tonight you tried to turn it on me. And I think you've forgotten that entertainment used to be about bringing people together, not driving them apart. You've turned your show into a weapon, and tonight you tried to turn it on me. Colbert's face twisted into a sneer that revealed something genuinely ugly beneath his polished television persona. A weapon? That's what you call holding people accountable? That's what you call using comedy to shine a light on injustice? He began pacing behind his desk like a caged animal, his movements jerky and erratic. You know what's really pathetic, Hugh? You're so desperate to protect your squeaky clean image that you'd rather stay silent than risk alienating a single ticket buyer. The audience began murmuring among themselves, sensing that they were witnessing something that would be talked about for years to come. Several people in the front row pulled out their phones, despite the show's strict no recording policy, desperate to capture this moment of raw, unfiltered conflict. Jackman's composure cracked further as Colbert's words hit their mark. Squeaky clean image. You think this is about my image? Stephen, I've spent my entire career trying to bring joy to people's lives. I've played characters that inspire hope, that make people believe in something bigger than themselves. What have you done lately besides tear people down for your own entertainment? You want to know what's really pathetic? You've become exactly what you claim to fight against. You're a bully with a microphone, using your position to humiliate anyone who doesn't worship at the altar of your political beliefs. Tonight you thought you could make me your latest victim, but I'm not playing your game. Colbert stopped pacing and whirled around to face Jackman directly, his eyes blazing with an intensity that bordered on unhinged. Bully? I'm a bully for Asking you to take a stand? For expecting you to use your influence for something more meaningful than selling movie tickets? His voice rose to near-shouting levels, spittle flying from his lips as he gesticulated wildly. You sit there in your ivory tower of moral neutrality, pretending you're above it all while people are suffering. You're not noble, Hugh, you're a coward. A privileged, out-of-touch coward who's too afraid to risk his precious career by standing up for what's right. The words hung in the air like a physical blow. Jackman's entire body went rigid, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. When he spoke, his voice was barely controlled, each word measured and deliberate. Stephen, I have spent my life standing up for what's right. I've supported countless charities, worked with organizations that help children, fought for causes I believe in without needing to broadcast it to the world for applause. But apparently, that doesn't matter to you because I won't perform my beliefs on command for your audience. You don't want guests, Stephen. You want puppets who'll dance to whatever tune you're playing that week. The studio's atmosphere had become suffocating, thick with tension that seemed to press down on everyone present. Crew members exchanged panicked looks, clearly out of their depth in handling such an unprecedented situation. The show's producers frantically whispered into their headsets, torn between cutting to commercial and letting this train wreck continue. Colbert leaned forward across his desk, his face contorted with rage and something that looked almost like desperation. Puppets? You think my guests are puppets? They're people with backbones, Hugh. People who aren't afraid to stand up and be counted when history comes calling. But you'd rather hide behind your movies and your musicals, pretending the world's problems don't exist. Jackman took a step closer to the desk, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than any shout. You want to see a backbone, Stephen? Here it is. I refuse to be bullied by you. I refuse to let you turn this interview into your personal political theater. And I refuse to sit here one more second while you question my character because I won't dance to your tune. The moment stretched between them like a taut wire, ready to snap at any second. The moment stretched between them like a taut wire, ready to snap at any second. Colbert's breathing was ragged, his chest heaving as he stared at Jackman with undisguised contempt. You think you're taking some kind of noble stand here? Walking away from hard questions? That's not courage, Hugh. That's exactly what I expected from someone who spent his career playing make-believe. Jackman's laugh was cold and bitter, cutting through the studio like a blade. Make-believe? Stephen, at least when I'm on screen, the audience knows they're watching fiction. You've been performing for so long that you've forgotten where the character ends and the real person begins. This isn't journalism. This is just sanctimonious bullying dressed up as social consciousness. The audience had gone completely silent, many covering their mouths in shock at witnessing such raw hostility between two beloved public figures. The carefully orchestrated world of late-night television had completely collapsed, revealing something ugly and genuine underneath. You know what the real tragedy is here, Stephen? Jackman's voice grew stronger, more confident as he found his footing in this confrontation. You had a platform that could have genuinely brought people together. You could have used comedy to heal divides, to find common ground, to remind people of our shared humanity. Instead, you chose to weaponize it. You chose to make it about us versus them, right versus wrong, pure versus evil. Colbert's face had gone from red to almost purple, veins bulging in his neck as Jackman's words found their mark. Don't you dare lecture me about healing divides. There are no two sides to human rights. There are no two sides to basic decency. Some things are worth fighting for, even if it makes people uncomfortable. Fighting for? Jackman's voice rose, to match Colbert's intensity. You're not fighting for anything, Stephen. You're fighting against everyone who doesn't think exactly like you do. You've created a show where dissent isn't allowed, where questioning your orthodoxy makes someone evil. That's not progressive, that's authoritarian. The studio erupted as several audience members began shouting their agreement or disagreement with either man. Security guards moved closer to the stage, unsure of their role in this unprecedented situation. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every second of this complete breakdown of professional decorum. Colbert slammed his hand down on his desk, with such force that his coffee mug jumped and spilled across his notes. Authoritarian? You want to see authoritarian? Authoritarian is staying silent while fascists take over the government. Authoritarian is caring more about your image than people's lives. Jackman shook his head slowly, his expression shifting from anger to something approaching pity. You know what, Stephen? I actually feel sorry for you. You've become so consumed with being right that you've forgotten how to be human. You've turned every conversation into a battle, every disagreement into a war. That's no way to live, and it's certainly no way to bring about the change you claim to want. The pity in Jackman's voice seemed to cut deeper than any insult could have. Colbert's face crumpled for just a moment before hardening again into a mask of defensive rage. Don't you dare pity me. I sleep fine at night knowing I'm on the right side of history. Do you, though? Jackman asked quietly, his voice now carrying a weight that silenced the entire studio. Do you really sleep well knowing that you've spent years tearing people down instead of building them up? Knowing that you've used your platform to divide rather than unite? Because I can see it in your eyes, Stephen. This isn't who you wanted to become. For a moment something vulnerable flickered across Colbert's features, a crack in the armor that revealed the man beneath the performance. But it lasted only seconds before the mask slammed back into place. Jackman straightened his jacket and looked directly into the nearest camera. Ladies and gentlemen, I came here tonight to talk about bringing stories to life, about the magic of entertainment and the joy of connecting with audiences. Instead, I've been subjected to a political interrogation and personal attacks. This isn't entertainment, this is just sad. He turned back to Colbert one final time. Stephen, when you remember who you used to be before all this consumed you, give me a call. Until then, find yourself a new guest. With that, Hugh Jackman walked off the Late Show stage, leaving Stephen Colbert standing alone behind his desk, facing a studio full of stunned faces and cameras that had captured every moment of his professional meltdown. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the sound of Jackman's footsteps echoing through the corridors as he left the building, his dignity intact while Colbert's lay in ruins on the studio floor.